Canoe Marathon is nothing short of remarkable. When it was first raced in 1982, it attracted 77 pioneering paddlers. A decade later, in 1992, that entry exceeded 1,000 for the first time. And in 1994, it officially eclipsed the Doozy as the country's most popular canoeing marathon. Many of the country's best paddlers returned to South Africa for this year's race. Much of the top money was being put on the Gauteng crew of Robbie Herefeld and Graham Monteith to snatch the top honours. But were they ready for the challenge?
Well, we've been stronger, but I think we should have a good run today. I've done a week's training and Rob's done 6 months, so that puts us about even.
Robbie, does this mean you've got a bit of an unknown factor in terms of fitness and form in the back?
No, not at all. Might be a little bit unfit, but we combine very well, so that hopefully is going to help us through quite a bit.
There were scores of boats ready to challenge them for the top honours. And for the first time, a major international contingent had made the trip out, including Irishman Gary Moore and Simon Dark. The 000 means that they're visitors. Those are not normal regulation numbers. They're actually coming from the UK. Gary, Simon, welcome. Have you had a good look at the course? What do you think you're in for today?
It's a lot of fun, I think. It's like a race back home in Ireland. I'm actually from Ireland, and like the Liffey, it's very much the same. So I've been a previous winner of that this year, about 2 weeks ago, and a couple of weeks ago I was second in the Marathon Worlds. So it's been pretty good year so far.
What are you looking forward to? I mean, just tell us a little bit about your recent form.
Well, again, I went to the Marathon Worlds and we came sixth in K2, and we've won various races at home with weirs and a few rapids. So we're looking forward to it and see how it goes.
The Durban surf lifesavers, the Chilupskis, were like fish out of water on a portage.
The first run's pretty hard. I mean, yesterday we tried it without shoes and too many thorns, so we'll have to run with shoes. We have to paddle the race with shoes, but obviously the big water and the rapids suit us because we don't like running.
The short paddle across Grassridge Dam was just enough to settle the nerves. Then the portage over the dam wall and through the Karoo bush before joining the Fish River itself. In addition to the men's race, there was a great deal of interest being expressed in the ladies' dice for the SAK2 title. Debbie Witten and Wendy White.
Oh, we're just going to go out there, have a fun and try our best and enjoy it. There's nice water, so it'll be great.
Wendy, you must have had a look at Keith's. I mean, everybody does before the race, yes or no?
Not letting out any secrets, but we did have a look at it. We'll see what happens when we get there.
Are you honestly saying this is a decision you're going to make on the river a couple of minutes before you get to the bridge?
You never know.
The marathon attracts paddlers from every conceivable walk of life. Starting in one of the later batches was blind paddler Freddie Buerta.
Definitely, no, we're going to try and shoot everything so far. My partner is very, so I can't see it in any way, so I'll just follow him.
The atmosphere and excitement generated by this marathon has made it an attractive prospect for sponsors.
The Fish River Marathon has always been one of the biggest and probably most social marathons on the calendar. And for the profile of Kahlua, the brand, what it stands for, the fish and Kahlua just go together absolutely perfectly.
One of the Durban stellar paddlers taking on his second fish is Elias Ndlovu with a mean fashion item here. He's turned the canoeing t-shirt around. Good design, eh?
Okay, yeah, it's a good design. It's a very design. I really love it.
It's your second fish. You did your first one in a single. You're paddling with your new partner now, eh?
Yeah, this time I've actually taken the guy who's his first time paddler. So I just want him to know more about rapid racing.
Getting into the water in one of the later batches is a man who's spent a great deal of his career winning races. He's probably known best as the Doozy King, Graham Pope Ellis, paddling with more of your family this time.
Yes, with my son this time. My wife decided to take a back seat and drive our vehicle, and my son's paddling with me.
Graham paddling with his son Lee reflects a growing trend in the Fish River Marathon. More women and more youngsters are taking part in a race widely regarded as exciting but relatively safe. One of the first obstacles the paddlers reach once they join the Fish River proper is a low-level bridge simply called the Toast Rack. It's made difficult not only because of the low height of the bridge, but because the water sweeps at an oblique angle across the front of the bridge. It also creates unprecedented traffic jams immediately below it. A few short kilometers through the willows and the paddlers encounter the most dangerous obstacle on the course. It's simply called Keith's Flyover. Robbie Herefeld and Graham Monteith led the pack into this dangerous obstacles, and shooting it for the first time in the race made it look deceptively easy. The second boat through, Peter Cole and Paul Murray. No strangers to Keith's flyover, Alan van Coller and Neil Evans. British paddlers Moore and Dark enjoy the South African white water. Immediately behind them, one paddler regarded as one of South Africa's best white water canoeists runs into a spot of bother, Colin Simpkins. For the rest of the field, Keith's flyover can be fraught with hazards. Just more than 20 kilometers into day one, the Soutpansdrift Weir Bridge and the massive rapids below. The spectators in seconds were surprised to see that Robbie Herefeld and Graham Monteith had surrendered their lead. Leading the field into this big rapid, Alan van Coller and Neil Evans. And it was abundantly clear from the expression on the faces and the way Neil Evans was looking over his shoulder that there had been a dramatic development at the front of the race. Now in second place, the Cape crew of Daniel Conradi and Maury Wilson. Herefeld and Monteith finally arrive with a broken rudder and no steering through the big rapid. What had gone wrong?
And coming into Brack River Weir, which is about 9 k's down from Keith, we pulled into the portage and the cable snapped on the rudder system.
The big water junkies of Simpkins and Byrne enjoying the waves and holes of Soutpansdrift. It's the biggest rapid on the course, and for the bulk of the field, the biggest adrenaline rush of the 80-kilometer course. Tree blocks and bridges are amongst the paddlers' worst enemies, and an accident, or a wrap as the canoeists call it, can happen in a split second in the most unexpected of places. While While the modern racing canoes have got lighter and faster, they're certainly not indestructible. And the power of water like the Fish River can reduce it to wreckage in seconds. Much of the skill in river paddling comes from reading the water when approaching obstacles like weirs, bridges and tree blocks. And it's here where many years on the water avoid accidents like this. With the 35 kilometers completed and the sun and river beginning to take its toll, the top contenders had to take out for a compulsory portage around the huge and dangerous Kutkop Weir. Now, there were just 2 boats left at the front of the race. Robbie Herefeld and Graham Monteith were desperately trying to make up for lost time and leading the charging pack. Knutsford Bridge marked the end of the 45-kilometer first leg, and a strong sprint saw a 3-second lead going the way of the Cape paddlers Danielle Conradi and Moray Wilson. Just behind them, Neil Evans and Alan van Coller, still very much in contention. But the drama of the first day belonged to Robbie Herefeld and Graham Monteith, who had made up a substantial amount of time but were still 2 minutes and 17 seconds adrift and disappointed.
It was a bit of a mess-up, to be polite. Look, everybody has mechanical failures at some stage or other, and so that part I'm not cross about. I'm angry about the fact that we were panicked into trying to paddle on without trying to fix it there and then. If we'd fixed it there and then, taken out 2 or 3 minutes that would have taken, worst-case scenarios, we would have come in with the guys.
At the end of 45 kilometers of hot sun and heavy water, most of the paddlers were tired. Just a few hundred meters from the finish, a last and deceptive rapid held something in store for many an unwary crew.
For most of the backmarkers, however, the very full river conditions caused havoc, particularly in the upper 10 kilometers, where the tight river weaving through the low-slung willow trees caused plenty of trouble. And 45 kilometers later, let's see how some of the sore backmarkers are actually feeling.
Yeah, it was a really nice race. Very tough to the river, yeah.
It was nice and big, and we're cruising. We had no problems there.
No swim?
We only had 2 swims, but just the reason of the willow trees. With the rapids, we're so easy. We're going quite well.
You have a good time?
Yeah.
See, that wasn't that bad, eh?
Start from there.
Oh dear.
Our pedal broke on the dam, so we ended up steering with our toes. That's why the shoes off. It's my partner's 48th birthday today as well.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Here's my present.
Hell of a way to spend the day. Was it good?
It was wonderful, yeah. It was a different sort of thing to do on your 48th, you know. It's a birthday that I'll never forget.
The overnight stop at the Craddock Spa is a popular place to put up the feet and mend broken boats and bodies.
I'm feeling it. That's why I'm having a little bit of therapy here. Hopefully by tomorrow I'll be moving again.
The ladies' race was producing plenty of thrills and spills.
What happened at Toe Point?
We swam. We shot it perfectly, and then the next minute we just went over.
We maintained our position for a long time, and not many boats passed us either, so we were really happy with the way it went. It was just unfortunate that we had that, and then we had another small swim just before the finish, which another ladies' crew just popped past us and made it into 3rd place.
Well, as driver, you must accept responsibility for what happened here. What actually went wrong?
We entered Sutpans underneath the bridge. We slipped out, and we tried to correct it, but the current was too strong. And then we went into swimming all the way down.
What is it like to swim down the whole of Sutpans?
Very bumpy, especially when you go down on your backside. Your backside gets a couple of bruises, but otherwise exciting.
One of the things that a race like the Fish is really famous for is the way that the canoe clubs actually gather together, and once the action on the water is long since finished, the action in the caravan park and the campsite actually begins. This is actually the Toti guys' campsite.
Well, Babs and Toti, yeah, one of the biggest, fastest growing canoe clubs in Durban at the moment.
Yeah.
In the country. In the country. All the boys did very well. We always have the biggest fire. Yeah. And the girls come and dry their hair here at night. They're quite fun.
The 24 cubics of heavy water took its toll on many of the contestants in this year's race. Before many could put up their feet and enjoy a braai or a cold beer, the canoe had to be repaired, if that's possible. There was a special buzz about this Karoo town on Saturday morning. Craddock had come alive with canoeing fever.
Day 2 of the Kalua Fish River Canoe Marathon saw a cold front move in overnight, and when the paddlers got to the start here at the bridge for Day 2, the weather was much colder than it was yesterday, and the wind was blowing strongly up the Fish River Valley. This is going to be a headwind for the paddlers. It's going to slow down the paddling time, and this should play into the hands of the chasing group. All the A batch gearing up behind us here are going to be starting in a batch, not in elapsed time. No big rapids on Day 2, but 3 major weirs. Each of them have the possibility of making or breaking the paddlers' race, maybe even their boat. One of the 2 boats right up front in this race, Neil Evans, is in the boat at the moment. You guys are just a couple of seconds off the pace, a good second, starting in a batch. What's the plan for today?
It's a tough one today with a mass start. It means that we need at least 3 seconds on them at the finish of today, and they've just got to stay with us. But there are a couple of good obstacles coming up, a portage, 3 weirs to shoot, so it's anyone's game.
While the paddlers and A-Batch gear themselves up for the start of Day 2 of the Kalua Fish River Marathon, it's becoming obvious that the character of the race is about to change, and change significantly. The top contenders in the last few minutes have been talking to provincial teammates, even club teammates, trying to strike up allegiances, because as the river widens on Day 2, paddlers are going to be able to ride in diamond formation. It's an energy-saving tactic which will allow the big guns to make their break and have enough energy to sprint to the finish. It also produces some interesting tactics which at times become quite dirty, but then with the SAK2 River title at stake, many paddlers think it's worth it. Daniel Murray, you've got the lead on Day 1. You've got Evans and Van Coller right on your tail. What's the game plan for today?
I think we'll try and survive the first portage, which is about 8 minutes paddle from the start here. Try and stay in the front bunch, in the front slip, in the front diamond, not to be in a weak position in the back of the bunch, and just trying to hang in there.
Portages are crucial in any canoe marathon, and few more so than the portage around the Baroda Weir, just a handful of minutes into the start of Day 1. It's here that the slightest mistake can see a paddler lose contact with the leading group. Portaging a canoe is difficult enough under any circumstances. One has to take one's hat off to see paddlers, for example, like this man with a prosthetic leg, tackling the difficult portage. The father and daughter Ravi combination had some unusual advantages over the uneven terrain.
How's it going? Your boat look in pretty good condition?
Looking well and truly fixed from yesterday, Jana.
With the sun once again baking down relentlessly, the seconds fought their way through the Karoo to the next of the many spectator points, Baroda Bridge, to find out what was happening at the front of the race. The dice at the front of the pack was now a 5-boat affair, setting the pace Daniel Conradi and Moray Wilson. The spectators caught up with the action another 4.5 kilometers downstream at Longacre Bridge. Now the Gauteng paddlers were putting in an interval to try and get rid of the Cape contenders, Neil Evans and Alan van Coller, with Robbie Herreveld and Graham Monteith just behind them. Hanging on grimly, overall leaders Daniel Conradi and Moray Wilson. At this stage, the tactics became even more cutthroat. The 3 Gauteng boats were doing their best to work together to make life difficult for the Cape crew of Daniel Conradi and Moray Wilson. For Conradi and Wilson, there was only one option to stay in contention. They had to set their own pace. 2/3 of the way through day 2, the first of the 3 crucial tactical weirs. Gauging weir. This is a 4-foot drop over which the Fish River flows strongly. Leading the pack into this obstacle, Robbie Herefelt and Graham Monteith, with the contenders of Moray Wilson and Daniel Conradi just behind them. Heading the third wave, the British paddlers of Melvin Swallow and James Block claim to have much experience shooting weirs on races like the Liffey in Ireland. They had little trouble with gauging weir, as did Byrne and Simpkins just behind them. With 3 major obstacles waiting in the last 15 kilometers, the short stretches of flat water provided some relief, for the second weir came into sight. Robbie Herefelt and Graham Monteith slide down the Marlow chute, a new addition to a weir that in previous years had been a compulsory portage. Just behind them, Alan van Coller and Neil Evans, with the contenders Daniel Conradi and Moray Wilson just behind them. One of the striking features of this year's marathon was the excellent performance by the leading juniors, Jason Callister and Ant Stott. They held on to a consistent top 20 position and proved that they will be a major force to be reckoned with, both locally and internationally. For many of the field, the Marlow chute held plenty of thrills in store. The third of the weirs to be negotiated is also the tallest and most dangerous, Craddock Weir. Leading the contenders into this awesome obstacle, Robbie Herefelt and Graham Monteith, sliding sideways over the treacherous high side of the weir. Just behind them, Alan van Coller and Neil Evans. However, Robbie Herefelt and Graham Monteith ran into more bad luck. This time their canoe got ensnarled in the torpedo buoy of one of the lifeguards, and they could only watch helplessly as Neil Evans and Alan van Coller and Daniel Conradi and Moray Wilson raced past them. Taking a bumpy straight line over Craddock Weir, Paul Moreira and Peter Cole, closely followed by Andrew Bonamore and Michael Cheeseman. The British paddlers Swallow and Block rated themselves as weir experts. They were tripped up by Craddock Weir. It's a notoriously dangerous obstacle that in many years has been recommended as a compulsory portage, largely because of the dangerous suckback at the foot of the weir. Being tripped up by this dangerous suckback, whitewater experts Colin Simpkins and Byrne. In the final sprint into Craddock, Alan van Coller and Neil Evans needed just a 3-second margin, but they couldn't shake off the Cape crew.
We were 4 in the bunch, and 3 was Transvaalers, and we were a bit lonely there. We got worked over a bit, but we managed to hang in. I think we had a good day. We didn't make mistakes. Everything went well.
The Gauteng crew of Alan van Coller and Neil Evans were consistent over the 80 kilometers and deserved runners-up.
Fish comes down to winning day 1. They did well. They took the first stage, and then with the match starting day 2, it's a case of staying with the bunch. So the guys did very well.
Many of the international paddlers finished comfortably in the top 20, Melvin Swallow and James Block.
The river was fantastic. It's probably the hardest race I've ever done. It's just out of this world. Tremendous.
Hard, but exhilarating. It's a great race. There's always something interesting to do. There's rapids, there's trees, there's weirs, there's everything. This race has got everything.
The ladies' title went to the KwaZulu-Natal crew of Wendy White and Debbie Whitten. For Debbie, it was a particular honour, having won the SAK1 ladies' title just a few years before. The mixed doubles title went to former Doozy winner John Edmonds, teaming up with Shirley Holmes, and the Masters to KwaZulu-Natalian Paul Chalupsky and Herb de Roble. And while I might have been delighted and indeed relieved to get my 4th fish behind me, I was also alarmed to find that blind paddler Freddie Botha had got there before me.
We shot everything, and all I can say to the organisers, it's a great race. One of the greatest ambitions in my life.
Day 2 had been equally tough on the equipment, particularly the weirs, and as the wreckage arrived in Craddock, the war story started to emerge as well. On the podium, the new SAK2 junior champions, Jason Callister and Anthony Stott. The ladies' race had been just as exciting, Debbie Whitten and Wendy White enjoying the laurels.
While in the background, just before prize giving starts, the people who like to call themselves the Fish and Chips are finding their way to Craddock, where after the prize giving they'll be looking forward to what the canoeing community knows as the mother of all parties. Perhaps that's an appropriate way to end the Kalua Fish River Marathon.
For Daniel Conradi and Maureen Wilson, their win had been a chemistry of stamina, river skill, cool heads, and indeed some good fortune. And while their eventual victory margin of 2.1 seconds might look slim, there was no detracting from the fact that they were now the national K2 River champions.